Healthcare professionals need to communicate clearly and effectively with each other. When they fail to do so, patient safety is at risk. Effective communication among all members of the healthcare team is essential in the provision of safe patient care. We will now review Part 1 of Effective Communication and Conflict Resolution, Chapter 18 of your textbook. People often assume that communication is simply giving information to another person. In fact, giving information is only a small part of communication. Think about the communication activities that occur in any healthcare setting. There is a lot of information communicated in such a small frame of time and often occurs during high-stress situations, which can easily lead to misunderstandings. There are 5 elements of communication. These are who relays the message, what is the message, in what way is the message relayed, to whom is the message relayed, and with what effect is the message relayed. And the 3 primary components are the sender, the receiver, and the actual message. Communication is a dynamic, cyclic process whereby the receiver becomes the sender on responding to the message. This is followed by repeated alternating of roles. Now we're going to discuss some subcomponents of communication. Because of this dynamic process, it is vitally important that we understand the different elements that can influence communication. First, we have the interpretation of information. Information interpretation is influenced by context and environment. This refers to the entire situation that's relevant to the communication. The environment is defined as physical surroundings and emotional conditions. Another influence is precipitating event. This refers specifically to the event or the situation. Another influence is preconceived ideas. These are ideas, conceptions, opinions, or thoughts the receiver has already developed before the communication. Then another influence is style of transmission. This is the manner in which the message is conveyed. Verbal and nonverbal styles may be used. Another influence, experiences. From the past, situations can actually influence how someone communicates. It can also influence how somebody interprets information. Another influence is personal perceptions. These can have a profound effect on the quality of the communication. The sender's message may mean to the receiver something that was entirely unplanned or unexpected by the sender. Another subcomponent is filtration. The most concise delivery of information is subject to some amount of filtration by the receiver. It is possible to filter out some part of intended communication that is actually essential to the correct understanding. Another subcomponent is feedback. This will include a response from the receiver. It's a dynamic process. The receiver interprets and responds to the original message. Then sender begins the same process of feedback to the receiver. Both communicants constantly assess nonverbal communication. This is based on interpretation and filtration, also known as the feedback loop, according to Van Servellen in 1997. There are 2 techniques for communication. These are verbal and nonverbal. Let's review these 2 techniques. Verbal communication. The spoken word. The factors that influence meaning of speech are same words can have several meanings, the tone or inflection affects the meaning, and the true meaning of a statement may be contained in the emphasis placed on a specific word. And then there is attitude. This involves a predisposition or tendency to respond in one way or another. Attitude that accompanies a verbal interaction is more meaningful than the actual words spoken. Now we're going to take a look at nonverbal communication. Many factors confirm or deny the spoken word. Some examples are facial expression, presence or absence of eye contact, posture, and body movement. Indirect nonverbal message influences communication, such as dressing style, lifestyle, and material possessions. Then we have the preconceived ideas and expectations interpret input from all sources. When verbal and nonverbal messages do not agree, the receiver is more likely to believe the nonverbal message. The importance of nonverbal clues explains the advantage of face-to-face communication. A few other nonverbal techniques that we can mention are emails, letters, text, and etc. A positive exchange of ideas is needed for effective communication. There are characteristics of positive communication. These include openness, empathy, supportiveness, positiveness, and equality. To achieve a positive communication style, we will continue to discuss some factors that will assist with this achievement. One must develop trust. Trust between the nurse and the patient is essential, just as trust between colleagues enable to have effective communication. Development of trust is enhanced by openness on the part of the nurse, honesty, integrity, and dependability. Trust can be achieved by communicating clearly in a language that laypersons can understand, keeping promises, protecting confidentiality, avoiding negative communication techniques such as blocking and false reassurance, and being available to the individual. Nursing and interdisciplinary team members should share the essential element of trust. So we're going to continue with positive communication style. Using iMessages. It's a fundamental component in accessible communication. It comments that start with "you" put the receiver's defenses on alert. I messages sound much less accusatory. Allow the receiver to respond to the true message rather than start to mount a defense. Then we also have establishing eye contact. This demonstrates undivided attention to the patient. It's important in communication with coworkers and interdisciplinary team members. Avoidance can be interpreted a number of ways: shy, scared, insecure, preoccupied, unprepared, or dishonest, and so on. Use of direct eye contact is a Western value. In some cultures, avoidance of eye contact is a more appropriate social behavior. Some other attributes to enhance communication style are keeping promises. Making and then breaking promises destroy trust in any interpersonal relationship. Once a commitment is made, every effort must be expended to fulfill the expectation. If the request is impossible to supply, explain the situation or circumstances. And expressing empathy. This is the ability to mentally place oneself in another person's situation to better understand the individual. This is understanding the experiences of the other person. Enhances the nurse's ability to help patient through a true understanding of what the individual is feeling and needs. Using techniques such as open communication, and clarifying can improve the communication style. Using open communication, we could use open-ended questions or statements that require more information than yes or no. Questions or statements that are phrased to require only one or two word responses may miss the mark entirely. Clarifying information. The sender should ask for feedback to be certain the receiver is correctly interpreting what is being said. The receiver should stop the sender anytime the message becomes unclear and provide feedback regularly. What I hear you saying is, I understand you mean to. Some other techniques to clarify communication are such things as use easily understood language, give examples, draw a picture, or even make a list. We also need to be aware of body language and utilize therapeutic touch. Being aware of body language. Be aware of the body positioning and movement because these can send loud messages to others. Communication is enriched through an open stance, such as holding arms at the side or out towards the patient rather than crossed in front of you, or leaning toward the patient as if to hear more clearly rather than away from the patient. When talking about using touch, individuals generally have a well-defined sense of personal space. The nurse should be sensitive to each patient's preference in terms of touch. A gentle touch for some can demonstrate genuine interest and concern. We want to enhance our skills as a positive, effective communicator. And able to do this, we also need to be aware of those negative communication techniques that can hinder or damage communication. These negative techniques are closed communication style, such as asking yes or no questions, making inquiries or statements that require single word answers and limit the response, crossing arms, hands on the hips, avoiding eye contact, or turning away or moving away from the individual. Another negative technique is blocking, such as we referred to earlier. This occurs when the nurse responds with non-committal and/or generalized answers. A nurse who is uncomfortable with certain topics may consciously or unconsciously block communication through generalizations or closed responses. Then we have false assurance. These answers are such as "don't worry" or "it'll be okay" in response to serious questions or concerns. It may be interpreted by the patient as placating or showing a lack of concern or a lack of knowledge. And then we have conflicting messages. This is where the verbal and nonverbal messages do not agree. This concludes part 1 of the effective communication and conflict resolution lesson. If you have any questions related to this course content, contact the instructor.